He was the wizard of 1,000 kings, and I chanced to meet him one night wandering. He told me tales, and he drank my wine. Me and my magic man kind of feeling fine. He had a cloak of gold and eyes of fire, and when he spoke I felt his deep desire to free the world from its fear and pain, and help the people to feel free again. Why don't we listen to the voices in our hearts? For then I know we'll find we're not that far apart. Everybody's got to be happy, everyone should sing. For I know the joy of life, the peace that love can bring. Thus spoke the wizard in his mountain home. The vision of his wisdom means we'll never be alone, and I will dream of my magic night and the million silver stars that guide me with their light.
Hi, and welcome to this video in the David Alexander Infinite Energy series. This is video 16, which is the 6th video in our new format. And my name is Björn Trofton, and I'm here with David. And David, what are we going to talk about today?
Thank you, Björn. Welcome, viewers. Today we are continuing to talk about what I call the hardware of infinite energy, devices that were really proven to work, or still are. And what was brought to my attention is that devices that normally would have an input equal to the output can have an output actually larger than the input if certain parameters are present. So we're introducing a list of those parameters. In video 15, we introduced rotation. And in this video, we're introducing what could be called transient events.
Okay.
Transient events are something that happens suddenly like that.
Okay. Do you have some examples of transient events that our viewers could connect with?
I think so. For example, you play the guitar, and then in a piano, the hammer hits the strings.
Okay,
There's the
so
guitar right there. So as you play it, there's a very short time interval where the string is beginning to vibrate. It's sitting there not doing anything, then you pluck it, then it's vibrating, and that few milliseconds or whatever it is that it's beginning to vibrate, musicians, I understand, call that the attack. And it's an example of a transient event between two different states of energy.
And so you're using sound as example, but this can happen in any kind of medium or with any kind
Right,
of...
can be electrical, can be audible sound, or in the case of these two inventions, it's the motion of water.
The motion of water in a transient event.
Exactly. For example, we're talking now, getting into the details of these inventions and the inventors. A man named Karl Schaefer, who lived in Chicago, and his invention was featured in a magazine article in 1973. And then James Griggs, who still lives in Georgia, and his invention became known in the 1990s. Now we have placed below links to more information, including United States patents, and their inventions were amazingly similar. They had an electric motor driving a rotor, which was machined to have a series of holes drilled radially, that is from the outside of the cylinder towards the center. And then
So the holes would at any time go straight out from the radius.
Right. So as this rotor was spinning inside a chamber, water was coming in, and then it was creating a constant series of water hammer events.
And so the water hammer events are the transient events in this case. And that's a term that's known from elsewhere.
Right, it's probably something people have experienced. If there's a water valve open, water's going through it, and you shut the valve off really quick, the water keeps going, and then it forms a vacuum, and then it slams back into the valve. In many cases, I've heard this happen myself, and it makes a loud noise, and that's called water hammer.
Okay, and in these inventions, Schaefer and Griggs rotors, then this spinning effect with the holes create a series of these...
A series. They were designed to make a water hammer events continually. They had hundreds of holes in these rotors, and that was their intent. Now, where they got the idea, I don't know, but what that led to was they got more heat out than the electric power that went in.
Okay, so in the spinning of this rotor in the chamber, and these water hammers, or that water hammer effect happening in there continuously, it produces heat.
Produces heat, but it produces more heat than one would calculate from the amount of electric power driving it,
Interesting.
going into the motor that was driving it. So that's what we mean by an overunity. The Schaefer device was measured to have an overunity effect as high as 7 at 700%. So you put in 1 unit, talking in terms of power rather than energy, 1 unit of power, you get 7 units of heat, which is, you know, with a plain old electric heater, it's 1 for 1. But this device would give 7, and the Griggs device would give a, not quite 2, it was actually about 1 2/3, 1.68 times the electric power that drove it.
Okay, so the one is a little bit more dramatic than the other one. And you've told me that these were both meticulously tested and measured, and yet what happened to Schaefer's invention?
Schaefer was never able to market his invention. He died in 1988, and then there were people in his small company that could try to continue to carry on. They were just not successful with it. But Griggs was more, maybe more oriented to people and what people needed in companies. So if somebody didn't have room, for example, for a conventional boiler to make hot water or steam, or in his case hot water, they could install this. It was about this big or so, and then it would pump water, but it would heat it not only equal to the energy going in, but exceeding it. So the excess was actually free energy. And then he's still, his company is still there in Rome, Georgia, selling these devices today.
Very interesting. And what we find with Griggs is that the overunity, or the excess heat, is given as a bonus.
Right.
But that is not their marketing pitch or the main purpose.
Right, he's well aware of it. This has been tested many times, and with this thing called the law of conservation of energy, which I claim is not a law, it's an assumption, and the fact that it's been quoted for nearly 200 years doesn't matter. It's still an assumption.
That's a bold claim to make.
Yes, it is.
But you have studied this for
43 years.
43 years.
That's correct. So Griggs knew his device was Overunity. He didn't really claim it to be. Schaefer was always trying to win that recognition that his device was Overunity, and he died before that happened, and eventually his company went out of business. So the interesting fact is that an Overunity device is still being sold by Griggs' company today, or at least I looked up information. It was about a year old. So there it is. It's out there and it works.
Very interesting. If you think about what we were talking about back in one of our first videos in this reboot regarding to Dr. Peter Lindemann, you know, the inventor desiring to be recognized and be special and have, you know, exaggerated ideas about his importance is one of the blocks that you mentioned.
That's one of the main blocks, yes.
And so it sounds here like Griggs was able to circumvent that stumble block in his ego and be
right.
Focused on the mission, so to speak.
I would agree with that, yes. So now we've covered two of these parameters. In our last video, and there I met the inventor, but that was like near the beginning of this trail for me. And that parameter was rotation, and this parameter we're introducing in this video is the transient event, and there are more parameters coming. For example, later on we'll be introducing a magnetic field and things like that. But these, I call them parameters added to what otherwise would be a device not showing any interesting Overunity. Allow it to do that, allow it to have the Overunity. And beyond these, I'll be attempting to explain my theory of how that actually can occur. Where does the energy come from?
Where does the excess energy come from?
And that will be interesting when I explain that.
Since you are challenging the law of conservation of energy. And these parameters can be combined, right? So it's interesting
right. For
to know
example,
that here there's rotation.
There is definitely rotation in these two. They're based on the rotation and the water hammer. And so I can't say that, you know, it's so many percent of this and so many percent of that. But they're both there, and we'll leave that for the future. If somebody can calculate, well, how much was due to rotation and how much was due to the transient event.
Certainly much more.
The fact is that they worked, well, the one worked, and the other one still does work.
Right. Much more to be discovered. But it's interesting to imagine the rotation inside this chamber for Schaefer and Griggs' inventions without the holes, and thus without the water hammers. If there would be an Overunity, it would be most likely much smaller.
Much smaller.
So-
I would agree with that.
So
Right.
okay. Once we get this paradigm of the law of conservation of energy challenged, once free or infinite energy becomes available, what do you see as the main
Result? Well, I would say energy will have a true price for it. There won't be a monopoly on it, on fuels, for example. There won't be fuels. And
thus-
the result will be a cleaner environment, a cleaner planet.
So there will be an end to a lot of these conflicts between
Right.
doing things or not doing things to save the planet, or going somewhere or having to stay home, and all this kind of things. So we already touched a little bit upon the future videos. Do you want to say anything more specific about the next video?
Well, we will keep introducing these in each video, another type of parameter or combination of parameters. So I would say what's coming in the next video is something that will be shocking.
Shocking. I have an idea about where you're headed with that, but
We'll leave that for the next
leave that
video. Right.
on the table for now. So thank you so much for watching, and David, I feel like there is still much more to come, so please keep subscribing and checking in, and then we will
Upvotes are nice too.
upvotes are very nice, and we will be seeing you in our next
Then,
video.
We say, see you next video.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.